looking at. And them folks gonna be not have to worry about paying 25%, not have to worry about their different tax bracket. It was a whole lot of thought into this.
Right.
So when people see 1.7, they're like, ooh, that's a lot of money. No, it's not. You got to look at what you're looking at. And them folks going to be at your ass for that 1.7. They won't tax on the 1.7 when you got to write this out, write that out. You got to go through all of that.
Okay, so
we didn't even.
So now let's talk boxing.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying? With the skill level that Brian Norman possesses and an opportunity at fighting a fighter like Boots, where Boots lies at right now. Let's just say we take 1.7 and we fight Boots and we beat Boots. You don't think that then on the rematch,
through the roof,
you could probably get double $4 million on the rematch?
Absolutely. But the reason I felt tried and the reason I know for a fact Eddie didn't want to make the fights because we gave him the off top. We got word of what he offered the other ones, and it was exactly what we wanted. For one, I think Stayonis wasn't. Stayonis was lower. Barrios, I think, was right there at it.
Boots moving to 154 pounds. I loved the fight. We reached out to Bokachik. You know, I think that's a great fight. You got Israil Madrimov. You know, you got some great fights at 154 outside of the champions. Love to fight a champion. But we got some decisions to make over the next 72 hours. But the decisions will not include Brian, Norman, Adrian, or Derek.
Will you find it tough ever doing a fight with those guys again after this?
Of course not. I don't care. I'd love to do a fight with them, but sometimes you miss the boat. Listen, maybe it all works out and we end up doing a unification, but he won't be getting any more money. That's it. That's the money. I mean, with all due respect, last time I checked, Brian Norman weren't that popular in Las Vegas. Where is Brian Norman from? Let me look it up now. I can't actually believe Brian Norman's turned this fight down. This is the problem with boxing. I don't know anything about Brian Norman, so we're going to just get some facts up right here now. It's not even coming up in the search. It's not a good sign, is it?
But you seen his last fight, what he made?
I didn't. Yeah, 100 grand.
Breaking news, Eddie Hearn came out revealing after Brian Norman turned down $1.7 million to fight Jaron Ennis in a unification. Most likely, Jaron Ennis is going to vacate his IBF title because he doesn't want to defend it against the mandatory that he already beat. I don't know why the IBF will mandate Jaron Ennis to fight someone he already beat. It makes zero sense. Due to that, Jaron Ennis is left no choice but to fight his mandatory or vacate. Now he has a third option, which is fight another champion. According to the boxing rules, one way to trump a mandatory is to unify the division. However, the problem is every single champion in the welterweight division already turned down a fight with Jaron Ennis. So Eddie Hearn revealed his plan is for Jaron Ennis to move up to 154 to either fight Madrimov or Pacheco, who dropped Virgil Ortiz twice, and a lot of people felt that he won the fight. These are the two options Jaron Ennis is exploring right now. And one thing for sure, these are great options. Two things for certain. The Madrimov fight is even a better and a tougher fight for Jaron Ennis than the Brian Norman fight. There's no secret. Brian Norman turned down the Jaron Ennis fight for a reason. He didn't want to have a short season being a champion. You guys hear Brian Norman and his team complaining about the offer Jaron sent him, even though that's by far his biggest payday. Forget about being his biggest payday. That's actually 17x his biggest payday. That's right. Brian Norman, his last fight, he made 100K. Well, Jaron Ennis offered him 17 times that, 1.7 million to fight, and Brian Norman still turned down the offer. Why, if you may wonder? Well, Brian Norman team said they want more money. They at least want 2.2 million. But here is what makes negative zero sense. They said they want more money. However, they have no other offer on the table that's even close to that. Brian Norman, instead of fighting Jaron Ennis in a unification fight on a main event, a fight if he wins, he can become a superstar or at least a star in the sport of boxing. Brian Norman walked away from his biggest payday, his biggest legacy day, in order to fight Derek on an ESPN undercard for a few hundred thousands. You see what's wrong with the picture? How you gonna complain about the money to unify the division when you have no other option? Brian Norman doesn't have any other offer that's close to $1 million to either unify or fight someone else. That's why he's fighting on Keyshawn undercard for a few hundred thousands as the champion, when he could have been fighting Jaron Ennis as the main event for $1.7 million. Now, when Brian Norman's father says the money is not enough after doing the taxes, this, that, and the third, even then, that's still by far Brian Norman's biggest offer on the table. Plus, on top of that, he gets to unify the division. You see, Brian Norman's team keeps talking as if this is the end of the road. As if the moment Brian Norman signs the contract to fight Jaron Ennis, that will be the end of his career. That's how Brian Norman's team is behaving, as if they have no confidence Brian Norman can beat Jaron Ennis. We know that to be a fact, not because of Brian Norman's team saying, however, by their actions. Action speaks louder than words. How is 17x your biggest payday? $1.7 million is not enough to unify the division. What a great opportunity this is for Brian Norman, who nobody knew. I mean, he gets to fight a name like Jaron Ennis, beat him, then in a rematch demand $4 to $5 million. How is that a bad deal? How is that anything less than a great deal? We all know 100% for sure, if Brian Norman was offered that same deal for that same amount of money for that same opportunity to fight any other champion currently in the welterweight division, Brian Norman would have had accepted the fight in a heartbeat with Stanionis or Mario Barrios. Therefore, why will Jaron Ennis be any different? The reason why is because Brian Norman doesn't believe he can beat Jaron Ennis, but he believes he can beat the other champions, or at least he feels he has a better chance at beating the other champions. You see, Brian Norman is looking at the Jaron Ennis fight as not just a loss, but a guaranteed knockout loss. That's how Brian Norman is treating Jaron Ennis, with so much respect. Not with his words, but more so with his actions. Yeah, Brian Norman can say nobody's scared of Jaron Ennis, he's not the boogeyman, but he's not willing to step up to the table. Remember, it was Brian Norman who raised his hand to fight Jaron Ennis. It was Brian Norman who called out Jaron Ennis. Jaron Ennis wasn't even checking for him. Then when Jaron Ennis called Brian Norman bluff, all of a sudden, Brian Norman went ghost mode. In all reality, Brian Norman is making a big mistake by turning down his biggest payday, an opportunity, and a payday to fight Jaron Ennis, since he's in a win-win situation. If he fights Jaron Ennis and loses, depending on how he loses, he can still end up being a winner. If he makes the fight competitive, oh, that's a big win for Brian Norman. His stock will go over the roof. If he manages to go to the distance and not go to sleep versus Jaron Ennis, his stock will still rise. If Brian Norman beats Jaron Ennis, then he's a star. He's automatically a star. Brian Norman will be a star just by making the fight competitive, let alone winning. But if Brian Norman goes in there, gets beat up every single round, then gets knocked out, in that case, that's when Brian Norman would be asking for more money, perhaps $2.2 million. So it could be some type of retirement money, a career-ending type of fight. Due to that, Brian Norman would want a career-ending type of payday, which is exactly what Brian Norman and his team are doing. They asking for a retirement payday, a career-ending type of payday, ready to lose by knockout type of payday from Jaron Ennis in order to accept the fight. That's exactly what I'm trying to say. If Brian Norman felt this was an opportunity to unify the division and put himself in position to be great, he will take the fight in a heartbeat. This is a great opportunity. But if he's looking at this fight like his career is going to end, then of course, he would rather keep the belt longer before choosing to be ready to lose by knockout to Jaron Ennis for $1.7 million. Therefore, what Brian Norman and his team need to realize, Eddie Hearn is offering them $1.7 million for a great opportunity to unify the division. He's not offering them $1.7 million to get knocked out by Jaron Ennis and become a meme. How they look at it is on them, and that's their confidence that reflects to the world. Furthermore, the boogeyman Jaron Ennis only has few options here, since all of the champions in his divisions are ducking him like there's no tomorrow. If Jaron Ennis chooses to stay at 147, he can fight Mean Machine. That's actually a good fight for Jaron Ennis, since Mean Machine gave both Virgil and Crawford tough fights. Now, if Jaron Ennis chooses to move up to 154 to fight Madrimov, that's even a tougher fight. A 50-50 type of fight, a dangerous fight, since Jaron Ennis has to move up to a new weight class. On top of that, Madrimov is a really good fighter. And then, of course, Pacheco, that's another good option. However, if Jaron Ennis can fight Madrimov and beat Madrimov better than Crawford did, that will be hella impressive, but the risk is Madrimov is a dangerous and a live opponent against Jaron Ennis. Pacheco, on the other hand, is an easier fight for Jaron Ennis than Madrimov. However, he's still a test. Let's not forget, Pacheco really beat Virgil Ortiz. So if Jaron Ennis goes in there and beats Pacheco, moving up in weight, that's going to be very impressive. So we'll see how Jaron Ennis is going to want to impress the fans by fighting Madrimov or Pacheco if he can make the fights come to fruition. Since everyone is avoiding Boots, Jaron Ennis only has few options. But the few options that are left are good options. With that being said, go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe below, and to be continued on the next episode of Akhi TV. Peace out. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.